Okay, let's start with something big. What if, just imagine, the path to saving America involved, well, fundamentally redefining what it even means to be an American?
And not just redefining, but maybe even tearing down some of its most established institutions.
Exactly. We're talking about this idea. It's been called a peaceful Second American Revolution, and it really forces you to confront some huge questions
Hmm.
about national identity, where things are headed.
Yeah, and it's not just some abstract thought experiment either. This whole provocative vision, it's right at the heart of Kevin D. Roberts' book, Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America.
Roberts, right, he's the president of the Heritage Foundation.
He is, and he basically lays out this argument that America is teetering on the brink of destruction, but not necessarily from outside, but from what he terms corrupt elites inside the country.
Okay, so internal threats and his solution.
Well, it's pretty radical. He argues that conservative Americans need to step up and reclaim, rebuild, or, and this is his phrasing, even burn down major national institutions to, save the country's future.
Burn down. That's strong language, not exactly subtle.
Not at all. And this book, it dropped in late 2024. Right when political polarization felt like it was, peaking.
Oh, yeah, I remember there were those intense debates around things like Project 2025.
Exactly, that huge conservative plan for restructuring government. And just generally, big questions everywhere about where America's institutions were going, what held us together as citizens. This book didn't just get published, it definitely made waves.
So it's more than just analysis, it's a call to action.
Absolutely. It reads like a political polemic.
Yeah.
A really strongly worded, sometimes aggressive, argument against opposing views. It's designed to persuade, to mobilize a specific movement on the right.
Got it. So our mission today, then, is to really get into the core claims of this very provocative book.
And then put it through a serious critique. We want to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising facts, give you a kind of shortcut to understanding what Roberts is arguing and why it matters so much right now.
Sounds good. And just so you know, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's NotebookLM for deeper, more dynamic book analysis. So let's start unpacking Robert's vision. What's the absolute core thesis?
Okay, the central argument is, well, it's stark. America faces imminent destruction, and the main culprits, these so-called corrupt elites.
And fixing it isn't just about reform, it's more drastic.
Exactly. It's about a total overhaul, something he frames as this peaceful Second American Revolution. It's not about tweaking the edges.
And he names names, doesn't he? Which institutions are in his crosshairs?
Oh, definitely. He points directly at institutions like, well, the FBI, Ivy League universities, even the New York Times.
Wow. Major pillars.
Right. And he makes this pretty astonishing claim that they are, quote, too corrupt to save. He explicitly argues for dissolving them.
Dissolving the FBI, that's a radical proposal.
It absolutely is. And connected to this idea of dismantling is his really strong belief that traditional values are the only valid foundation for renewing the nation.
Traditional values meaning?
The book uses very strong religious language. It roots the whole vision in Christian morals as the baseline. And it calls for institutions to actually support things like public prayer, Christian norms.
So it's not just about individual belief.
No, not at all. It's about embedding a specific religious framework right into how the country is run, into public life itself.
Interesting. And it's not just the left he's criticizing, right? He takes aim at some conservatives, too.
Yes, that's a key point. He critiques what he calls wax museum conservatives, his term, suggesting they're too passive, maybe ineffective.
So he sees a need for a different kind of conservatism.
A new, more active, more confrontational kind, yes. He thinks that's what's needed to actually make a difference.
That focus on active confrontation really comes through. You mentioned the language.
You can't miss it. The foreword itself uses imagery like circling the wagons and loading the muskets. And throughout the book, these metaphors of fire, of burning things down, they keep appearing.
To emphasize urgency.
Exactly. Urgency. And the massive scale of change he thinks is necessary, it's very deliberate rhetoric.
So, okay, let's say this revolution happens. What's the rebuilding plan look like? What comes after the burning down?
According to Roberts, rebuilding can only happen through a strict return to certain conservative religious values.
Like what specifically?
Well, he pushes hard for classical education, for establishing Christian-centric institutions, and for implementing, frankly, anti-pluralist policies. That's presented as the only way forward.
Anti-pluralist, so explicitly not embracing diversity of belief.
His vision really prioritizes one particular set of beliefs and values. It implies very little room for others.
And didn't you say he connects this to national security somehow?
Yes, directly. He strongly advocates for public prayer, and he links it explicitly to national security, especially when he talks about rivals like China.
So prayer as a strategic tool.
That's how he presents it. Faith isn't just a moral guide for him in this context. It's framed almost like a strategic weapon, something essential for America to face its enemies.
Okay. Wow. That lays out the book's vision pretty clearly. It's bold, no doubt.
Extremely bold.
So now, big question. How does Dawn's early light actually stand up when you put it to the test, when you scrutinize it? We started by looking at it against, well, the preamble to the Constitution, the basic aims of the Republic.
Right, so first aim, form a more perfect union. On this, Roberts, it scores low in our assessment.
Why low?
Because the rhetoric is just so polarizing. It seems designed to exclude large groups of Americans rather than trying to bring people together under some common identity. It frames a lot of people as the problem, not part of the union he envisions.
Okay. What about established justice?
Also falls short, another low score. Justice in the book isn't really defined as equal rights for everyone. It seems to be more about alignment with a specific ideology, a specific religious conformity.
Can you give an example?
Well, he suggests pretty clearly that only those adhering to Christian norms are the real, digamos, normal Americans who truly belong. So justice becomes conforming to his view, not universal protection.
Got it. Next up, ensure domestic tranquility.
Again, low. The book actively calls for major upheaval, for burning down institutions. That's pretty much the opposite of domestic tranquility and stability. It's a recipe for confrontation, not calm.
Okay, provide for the common defense. How does it fare there?
We gave it a moderate score here. Security concerns are definitely highlighted, that's clear.
Great.
But they're really tightly linked to these very specific religious policy ideas, like public prayer boosting national security, which, limits how universally applicable that approach is. It's a narrow view of defense strategy.
Makes sense. Promote the general welfare.
Low again. Because welfare in the book seems to be framed as mainly benefiting those who fit Roberts' quite narrow definition of normal, which by definition excludes or marginalizes many Americans.
And finally, secure the blessings of liberty.
Also low. Because the kind of liberty envisioned seems restricted. It wouldn't fully apply, it appears, to dissenters, religious minorities, or ideological opponents. It's liberty for some, maybe, but not liberty for all, equally.
So, judged against the Constitution's own stated goals, the book seems to have some significant tensions.
Significant tensions, yes. Beyond the preamble, we also wanted to dig into the nature of the claims. Like, what's presented as fact? What's just opinion? Does it offer real understanding or even wisdom? We used a framework sometimes called the Adlerian epistemic lens for this.
Okay, the Adlerian lens. What did that reveal? Let's start with opinion versus knowledge.
Well, a lot of the book's key claims really land in the category of opinion. Things like which specific institutions are too corrupt to save. That's a judgment call.
Right, not an objective fact.
Exactly. Same with his definition of who counts as normal people. Yeah. And even his strong belief that public prayer is effective in strategic competition with, say, China. These are strongly held beliefs, presented forcefully, but they remain subjective opinions.
What about actual factual knowledge? Is there verifiable stuff in there?
Yes, there is. The book includes factual biographical details about Roberts himself, his background. It gives current information related to Project 2025, which is verifiable. And it certainly provides a clear articulation of contemporary conservative grievances. You can fact-check that these are indeed concerns held by many on the right.
Okay, so there's opinion, there's some factual knowledge. Yeah. What about understanding? Does the book help you understand the perspective, even if you don't agree?
It does try to foster understanding, yes. It connects the perceived problems with elites to bigger historical and cultural narratives. And it weaves Roberts' own personal story into his policy critiques.
Which makes it more relatable.
It helps readers grasp the why behind his arguments, the emotional, maybe historical context driving them. You start to understand why he feels this way.
And then the highest level, wisdom. Does the book offer guidance towards, deeper truths or the collective good?
This is where it gets tricky. Roberts is definitely pursuing what he sees as ultimate goods, national renewal, religious virtue. Those are his goals. But the way he proposes getting there and the vision itself, they are critiqued for being deeply exclusive. There's a real lack of practical pluralism. So Any wisdom it offers is kind of limited by that narrow focus. It aims for renewal, sure, but it seems to build that renewal on excluding people, which works against a broader societal wisdom that usually embraces diversity.
That emphasis on exclusion brings us right to a kind of ethical test, doesn't it? We thought about applying a sort of golden rule test.
Right. Asking, essentially, would these proposals seem fair or desirable if the rules were reversed, if you're on the receiving end?
And what was the verdict on that?
Well, a pretty significant ethical asymmetry jumps out. Roberts pushes for policies that would clearly privilege conservative Christians, defining them as the normal Americans.
And what about everyone else?
There's very little, basically no accommodation made for pluralist beliefs or minority perspectives in his framework.
So put yourself in the shoes of someone Roberts might consider abnormal, maybe a religious minority, maybe someone with different political views. How would his agenda impact you?
If you flip the roles like that, the book's agenda would pretty clearly marginalize your civil rights, your religious freedom. It just doesn't offer that sense of reciprocal respect for different viewpoints.
So it doesn't really pass that golden rule standard.
No, not in terms of empathy or mutual respect. It falls short there.
You know, wading through these really complex and frankly challenging ideas, it feels like a good moment just to pause and reflect. And actually, Mindful Moments, that's our YouTube channel, offers AI book analysis that's specifically designed to spark exactly this kind of reflection and encourage rational thought. Something to check out.
Good point. Reflection is definitely needed here.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Let's talk about the logical analysis of Dawn's early light. What are its strengths, logically speaking, and where are the gaps or weaknesses?
Sure. One pretty clear weakness is the use of ambiguous terms. Words like normal, elite, common sense.
They're used a lot, but what's the problem?
They often aren't clearly defined, which can lead to a kind of circular reasoning. For example, Roberts might imply his beliefs are common sense because normal people hold them, but normal people end up just being defined as those who agree with him. It becomes a closed loop, hard to argue with from the outside.
Right, it defines its own terms. Are there outright contradictions?
There seem to be, yes. One that stands out is the constant critique of elites, while Roberts himself, as head of a major D.C. think tank, occupies a pretty elite position.
That's an interesting tension. Any others?
Well, there's a tension between promoting freedom as a core value, but then simultaneously calling for policies that seem to exclude people with nonconformist beliefs or different religious practices. Freedom for whom, exactly?
What about logical fallacies, things like straw man?
Yes, the book definitely seems to use straw man arguments. It presents simplified, sometimes distorted versions of progressives or other opponents, making their positions seem unreasonable or easy to knock down.
And the evidence used?
The evidence is often more anecdotal or rhetorical rather than empirical. There's not a lot of hard data or systematic research presented to back up some of the bigger claims about institutional corruption or the effectiveness of proposed solutions.
Okay, those are some significant logical critiques. But we also have to acknowledge this book clearly has impact. It resonates. So what are its strengths, even if we disagree with the logic?
That's fair and important. Despite the logical or ethical issues we've raised, the book is a very forceful and clear articulation of grievances felt by many on the American right today. That clarity is a strength.
And the personal element.
Yes. Weaving in his personal story adds context, adds emotional weight. It makes his perspective feel very real and relatable to readers who share similar feelings or experiences. And critically, it doesn't just complain. It offers a concrete agenda. People often respond to that directness.
So clear voice, emotional connection, concrete plan. Got it.
Now, stepping back from just the pure logic, what are other overall weaknesses you'd point to? Well, beyond the logical gaps, there's the reliance on pretty extreme rhetoric, that burning institutions language we talked about, the rejection of pluralism. It's designed to shock, perhaps, but it can also alienate.
Lack of detail, too.
Yes, often there's a lack of specific policy detail on how these radical changes would actually work. And as we mentioned, not much supporting empirical evidence for the biggest claims. Plus the ethical asymmetry and the way it sort of positions the author as the ultimate moral authority.
And it feels like it leaves some huge questions just unanswered, right?
Absolutely. Really crucial questions. Like, how exactly would these massive reforms be carried out within the rule of law? That's not really addressed.
Or can the country even function if the governing blueprint actively excludes large chunks of the population, labeling them abnormal?
Right. What happens to national unity then? And just fundamentally, what about all the Americans who simply don't fit into Roberts' specific definition of normalcy? Where do they fit in this vision? The book doesn't really provide practical or inclusive answers for a diverse, real-world society.
Okay, last big area to consider, the long-term consequences. If this vision were implemented, what might be the social, economic, and even spiritual impacts down the road?
Socially, the likely outcome seems pretty clear. More exclusion, deeper divisions, probably increased conflict. If you start dismantling public institutions and narrowing who counts as a citizen, that inherently threatens national cohesion and civil liberties for many.
What about the economy? Does the book offer an economic vision?
Not really. There's virtually no substantive economic analysis. The focus is almost entirely on the cultural and ideological battles, on achieving ideological purity. It's not an economic plan.
So unknown economic consequences, potentially significant ones.
Unknown and likely disruptive given the scale of institutional change proposed, but not analyzed in the book itself.
And spiritually, it emphasizes Christian morals, but what are the wider spiritual implications?
Well, while it definitely elevates public prayer and Christian morals as vital for the nation,
The potential downside.
it comes at the expense of interfaith respect. It undermines the long-standing American tradition of religious pluralism. By centering one specific tradition so heavily, it risks marginalizing, maybe even demonizing other spiritual paths. That could lead to a less tolerant, not more unified spiritual environment overall.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. If you had to distill the essence of Dawn's early light, what would it be?
I'd say it's a radical blueprint for renewing America. It's grounded firmly in quite exclusionary conservative values. It's driven by really passionate, urgent rhetoric, and it's deeply steeped in this sense of an existential national crisis.
And our assessment.
Well, Roberts is definitely an articulate writer, and the book is powerfully rooted in his own story. But based on our critique, it falls short on things like conceptual clarity, logical consistency, and importantly, equitable ethical standards.
So the bottom line is,
The bottom line of our critique is that this vision, while aiming to save America, would likely end up destabilizing the very union and the liberties it claims to protect. It just doesn't measure up well against key tests of rationality, ethics, and civic-mindedness.
we really hope this deep dive has given you a solid yet efficient understanding of what's in this very impactful book. Hopefully you can now grasp its main arguments and also the critical perspectives on them pretty quickly.
And ultimately, this book really pushes a fundamental question on all of us. Can a nation truly be saved if the method involves drawing lines, deciding who belongs and who doesn't?
Yeah, what does a truly robust, genuinely inclusive vision for America actually look like? That's something to think about.
Definitely.
And if you're looking for more content like this, more intellectually stimulating analysis that encourages critical thinking, do check out Mindful Moments on YouTube and, of course, our podcasts.
And remember, you can click the link right there on your screen for the full, in-depth book summary. Feel free to subscribe, share, or even purchase the book itself via the link if you want to read Robert's arguments firsthand.
Absolutely. But most importantly, keep thinking critically.